The Last Gift from My Father. Chapter 1. I'm 18 years old. My name is Michael Carter. I live in a small apartment in Cleveland, Ohio with my mom and little sister. But this story isn't about me. It's about my father and the one gift he gave me that changed my life forever. I was 10 years old when my dad first started getting sick. He was always tired. He used to be strong. He worked at a car repair shop. He would lift heavy tools and come home with grease on his hands, but he always smiled when he saw us. Then one day he came home and just sat down. Didn't speak. Didn't eat. Mom said it was just stress, but I knew something was wrong. Weeks passed. He started coughing a lot. He would hold his chest and take deep breaths like he couldn't find air. We didn't have much money to go to the doctor, so he waited and waited. One night, I heard my parents whispering. Mom was crying. She said, "We need to tell him the truth, Mike." Dad said, "No, not yet. Let him just be a kid a little longer." I didn't know what they were talking about, but I knew something was breaking, and it was my father. Chapter 2. The Day I Knew. A few weeks after that night, my dad didn't go to work. He stayed home, lying on the couch, a blanket over him and his hand resting on his chest. I asked him, "Dad, are you okay?" He smiled and said, "Just tired, buddy. I'll be fine." But he wasn't fine. That same week, I saw my mom counting coins on the kitchen table. She looked worried. I stood at the door, quiet, watching her. She didn't see me, but I saw her wipe tears from her face with the back of her hand. Later that night, I heard her on the phone. She was begging someone, "Please, he needs the test. I'll find a way to pay. Please help us." That was the night I realized something big was happening. Something they were trying to hide from me. The next morning, I asked my dad, "Are you dying?" He looked at me. His eyes were tired, but calm. He patted the seat next to him and said, "Come here, Mike." I sat next to him. He took my hand, something he rarely did. "I'm sick, but I'm fighting. I'll always fight for you and your mom. You know that, right?" I nodded, even though my heart was shaking. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Sometimes, love means doing things that hurt, even when we're scared. Even when we're weak." I didn't understand it then, but one day I would. Chapter 3. No one knew but me at school. I didn't tell anyone. Not my teachers. Not my best friend, Josh. Not even the school counselor who once asked, "Is everything okay at home?" I just smiled and said, "Yeah, everything's fine." But everything wasn't fine. My dad was getting worse. Some mornings he couldn't get out of bed. Other days, he forced himself up just to eat breakfast with us. He always tried to smile in front of me and my sister, but when he thought we weren't looking, his smile would disappear. My mom was working double shifts at the diner. Sometimes she'd come home after midnight. I'd hear her open the door slowly, drop her purse on the table, and just sit in the dark for a few minutes before going to bed. One night, I woke up and found her in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a pile of hospital papers. I asked her, "Is Dad going to be okay?" She looked up at me, and for a second, She tried to lie, but then her eyes filled with tears. "We don't know, honey. The doctors say he needs a surgery, a big one, and we don't have the money." I didn't say anything. I just stood there, frozen. I didn't cry. Not then. But that was the first time I felt something heavy settle in my chest, like a stone that would never go away. Chapter 4. My Father's Promise. One morning, Dad called me into his room. He looked pale, his skin thinner than before, his eyes a little dull, but his voice was steady. "Mike, come sit. I want to talk to you." I sat on the edge of the bed, nervous. He took my hand again, just like before. That meant it was serious. "I might not be around forever," he said. "But I want you to know something. No matter what happens to me, I'm proud of you. I love you. And I believe in you." I tried to speak, but my voice broke. I shook my head. "Don't say that, Dad. You're going to get better." He smiled gently. "Maybe. Maybe not. But I need you to promise me something." "Anything," I said. "Take care of your sister, help your mom, and keep going, even when it's hard." I nodded, tears now running down my face. He reached into the drawer beside his bed and pulled out an old, small box. Inside was his dog tag from when he was in the army, a faded photo of me as a baby, and a folded note. "This is for later," he said. "Not now. When the time comes, you'll know." I didn't understand what he meant, but I took the box, held it tight, and that was the day my father gave me his promise and left me with a mission. Chapter 5. The Night. Everything changed. 2 weeks later, it happened. It was cold outside. Snow was falling. My sister was asleep, and I was sitting by the heater doing my homework. Mom was late from work again. Dad was in his room. Quiet. Too quiet. I went to check on him. I knocked. "Dad?" No answer. I pushed the door open slowly. He was lying on the bed, his hand over his chest, his eyes closed. I walked over. "Dad?" I said again, louder. He didn't move. I touched his hand. It was cold. My heart dropped. I ran to Mom's phone and called 911. I don't remember what I said, just that I was crying and begging someone to come. That night, the hospital lights were too bright, the halls too quiet, the doctor too calm when he walked out. He looked at my mom, then at me. "I'm sorry," he said. I didn't hear anything after that, just the sound of my mom crying, and my little sister asking, "Where's Daddy?" I wanted to scream. I wanted to run, but I didn't. I stood still, because something inside me had changed. Chapter 6. The Box on My Shelf. After the funeral, everything felt quiet, too quiet. Even our small apartment felt like it had lost its voice. People came. They hugged us. They said things like, "He was a good man. Stay strong if you need anything." Then they left, and we were alone again. I didn't cry much at the funeral, but later that night, when I sat in my room, I saw the little box Dad gave me, still on my shelf. I opened it slowly. The dog tag was still there, the photo of baby me, and the note. I unfolded the paper with shaking hands. It was his handwriting. Strong, clear. Mike, if you're reading this, it means I'm not there anymore. I know it's hard. I know it hurts. But listen to me, son. This world, it doesn't stop for anyone. You can cry. You can be angry. But don't give up. You're stronger than you think. Stronger than I ever was. Be the man your mother needs. Be the big brother your sister depends on. And don't forget, I'm always with you, in every step you take. Love, Dad. I read it over and over again, until the ink blurred through my tears. That night, I didn't sleep, but I made a promise, just like he did. Chapter 7. Picking up the pieces. The next morning I got up early, earlier than usual. I made breakfast for my sister, packed her lunch, braided her hair the way Mom usually did. Mom was sitting at the kitchen table staring at nothing, her eyes red and tired. I walked over to her, put my hand on her shoulder and said, "I got it today, Mom. You rest." She looked at me, surprised. Then she nodded slowly. No words. That became our routine. I started helping more, with groceries, with bills, with keeping my sister calm when she missed Dad too much. At school, I stayed quiet. I studied harder, worked part-time at a grocery store after classes. The manager was kind. He knew what had happened. Sometimes I'd stop and think, I'm just a kid. I shouldn't have to do this. But then I'd hear Dad's voice in my head. Keep going, even when it's hard. And I did. Because when you love someone deeply, you carry their strength with you. And my father's strength, it lived in me now. Chapter 8. The Scholarship Letter. Months passed. Winter melted into spring. Mom picked up more shifts. I kept working, studying, and taking care of my sister. Some days were harder than others, like the day she asked, "Why did Daddy have to go?" I didn't have the right words, so I just held her and said, "Because he gave everything to protect us." One afternoon, I came home from school and found a letter in the mailbox. It was addressed to me, from a university in New York. I opened it with shaky hands, not expecting much. But then I read the first line. "Congratulations, Michael. You've been awarded a full scholarship." I stood frozen, the letter trembling in my hands. A full scholarship. My mom walked in a minute later, saw my face. "Mike, what is it?" I handed her the letter. She read it, and her eyes filled with tears. She didn't say anything. She just wrapped her arms around me and cried into my shoulder. That night, I went to my room, opened the little box, held the dog tag in my hand. "Dad," I whispered, "I did it." Chapter 9. Leaving home. Summer came quickly. Boxes stacked in the living room. My scholarship covered everything, tuition, dorm, even books. But something about leaving felt heavy, like I was walking away from the place where my father's voice still echoed. My little sister helped me pack. She folded my shirts the way I taught her. "Don't forget to call," she said. "Every day." "I will," I promised, hugging her tightly. Mom walked me to the bus station. We didn't talk much. Sometimes words just aren't enough. As the bus pulled in, she placed something in my hand. It was Dad's dog tag. "Take him with you," she whispered. "He'd want to see you fly." I nodded, fighting back the tears. As the bus rolled down the highway, I looked out the window, at the town, at the streets I knew by heart, at the family I was leaving behind. And in my pocket, I held on to the weight of my father's memory. But in my chest was something even heavier. Hope. Chapter 10. A New Beginning. The first few days at college were tough. I barely knew anyone. Everything was new, the campus, the people, the professors. But it was also exciting. I could feel the possibility in the air, like a fresh start had been handed to me. The first time I sat in a lecture hall, I felt a mixture of pride and fear. Pride, because I was finally here. Fear, because I wasn't sure I belonged. But then I remembered what my dad told me. You're stronger than you think. And I believed him. One night, after a long day of classes, I sat down in the dorm and opened the box again. I pulled out Dad's dog tag and the note. I read the words one more time. You're stronger than you think. Stronger than I ever was. I had his strength inside me. I had his courage, his love for us, and now I had a chance to do something great with it. In the weeks that followed, I found my place. I made new friends. I joined a club. I kept my grades up. But more importantly, I started to believe in myself. Chapter 11. The Unexpected Call. It was the end of my second semester. The weather was warm and summer break was just around the corner. I had just finished a final exam when my phone rang. It was my mom. "Mike," she said, her voice shaking. "It's your sister. She's been in an accident." My heart dropped. I felt my entire world tilt. I didn't hear the rest of her words. All I could think about was getting home. I packed my bags in a blur and booked the first flight back. The flight felt like the longest 2 hours of my life. I couldn't stop worrying. What happened? Is she okay? Why didn't she call me? Why didn't Mom tell me sooner? When I arrived, I rushed to the hospital. I found Mom sitting in the waiting room, her face pale, her hands shaking. "Where is she?" I asked, panic in my voice. "She's going to be okay, right?" Mom didn't look up, but she whispered, "She's in surgery." I sat next to her, both of us silent, waiting. Chapter 12. A Father's Legacy. Hours later, the doctor came in. "She's stable now," he said, "but it's going to take time for her to heal." I felt a wave of relief flood through me, but it was followed by a deep ache in my chest. I went to her room later that night. She was asleep, her face bruised, her body wrapped in bandages. I sat by her side, holding her hand. I whispered to her, "You're going to be okay. You're so strong, just like Dad." The next morning, when she woke up, she turned her head toward me. Her voice was weak, but she smiled. "Mike, you're here," she whispered. "I'll always be here," I said, choking on my words. She squeezed my hand and then closed her eyes again. Chapter 13. Moving Forward. It took weeks for my sister to heal, but during that time something changed in me. I began to understand what it meant to truly live my father's legacy. It wasn't just about taking care of my family. It was about finding strength even when things seemed impossible. I went back to school after the summer break. I kept my grades up, I kept my promises, and every now and then, when I felt lost or overwhelmed, I reached into my pocket and touched the dog tag. It was my reminder that I could handle anything, no matter how hard. Chapter 14. The Last Gift. A year later, I came home for winter break. I walked into our apartment and found Mom sitting at the table, a box in front of her. She smiled up at me. "I think it's time," she said. It was the same small box Dad had given me, but this time it felt heavier. Inside was the note I had read so many times and something else. A letter. From Dad. "Mike, if you're holding this letter, that means I've already left this world. But you're not alone. I'm proud of you, son. You've already shown the world how strong you are. I know you're going to make a difference. I know you'll keep our family safe and loved. And always remember, you are never alone. You've got me with you in your heart. Forever. Love, Dad." I read it through the tears, and I understood. My father had given me everything, his strength, his love, and now his final gift, the belief that I could do anything. Chapter 15. The Journey Ahead. I returned to college, but this time, something was different. I felt more grounded. I wasn't just trying to survive, I was living. I was taking risks. I was making my dreams a reality. And through it all, I carried my father's legacy in my heart. Every step I took, he was with me. There were days when life felt difficult, when I wanted to give up. But then I would feel that small weight in my pocket, the dog tag, the note, and I'd remember what Dad told me. Keep going, even when it's hard. And I did. Years from now, when I look back on all that I've accomplished, I'll remember my father's sacrifices. I'll remember his words. And I'll know that I did my best to honor him, to carry his strength, and to love my family the way he loved us. Because no matter where life takes me, I'll always be my father's son. And that is the greatest legacy I could ever have. The end.